This is The Sports Life.
Under center, Will Rogers, snap, toss sweep to the right, Coleman with space, blocked well, pulls over a Bruin at the goal line, did he get in? 2 arms up, touchdown Washington.
And the snap back by Kreutz, here is Allmeyer, deep pattern left, got a man open, caught Bryant, 10, 5, touchdown! Touchdown, Illinois!
And welcome into the Sports Life. We'll team in here along with Dalton Scheller. Some fun football sounds as the regular season is winding down. Well, for this week's show, Dalton, I think we got a couple good things to review. And one of them I think people will enjoy is our chat with Richard Clark, who's the director of the college football playoffs.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun for so many of our listeners, but also we have some big action happening in football. It's the big one from the horseshoe. Of course, Indiana's involved, right? It's got to be a big one. They're taking on Ohio State. We're going to be breaking that one down with Zach Osterman and Tim May, but also we're going to get a little bit acclimated to the USC-UCLA rivalry by speaking with Josh Lewin and Jordan Moore later on as we get to learn a little bit more about the Trojans and Bruins.
Well, it's now time, Dalton, to jump into our Sounds of the Week.
And we got a lot of football coming up, but why don't we start on the hardwood floor? Wisconsin men's basketball had a huge upset here recently. They knocked off number 9 Arizona. Get this, for Wisconsin, they scored 103 points in the win. Arizona only has 88, and here's head coach Greg Gard speaking afterwards to his team.
You have to accomplish something before you really, really believe. Did you see these guys' shirts? It says make them believe. Okay? If you can't believe in each other after that, okay, then you got to check yourself. That shows you what the potential is in this room. Great job, guys!
Wisconsin's head basketball coach Greg Gard. I mean, think about this one, Dalton. At the end of the season, the portal got him. He was building a nice ball club, and then it wasn't so nice. He had all these pieces to fix. So now he knocks off a top 10 team, and Wisconsin scores over 100 points, and it was a regulation game. How is any of that possible?
It's amazing. It really is when you think about it. But let's keep with Wisconsin because Wisconsin football nearly pulled off a huge upset of their own. They had Oregon on the backs of their heels, kind of falling backwards in Madison, but Oregon finds a way to survive the Badgers and the jump around. And here's head coach Dan Lanning speaking afterwards about escaping Madison with a victory.
We're a resilient team, right? And it takes everybody on that team, everybody on that sideline mattered tonight. We just got to keep going to work, right? And I don't think tonight was our best, but we were resilient, and when it mattered most, we got it done. I mean, that last play on defense is a great example of how those guys played all night, right? Attacking the ball, and eventually it came down to a takeaway. So big time props to those guys going out there and executing.
Dan Lanning after that game. It was interesting, a great win for Oregon. I mean, let's face it, you're number 1, you're undefeated. You're going to get everybody's best shot, and you're on the road in Madison. That was an amazing game, and the only victim of this whole thing really was the offensive coordinator of Wisconsin. He got the broom after that one.
That's right. Well, and hey, by the way, we speak of coaches and contracts. One of the biggest talking points in Big Ten football right now is the contract extension that Curt Cignetti's getting at Indiana, and he himself talked a little bit about that contract extension after the pen ink finally dried on the paper. Here's what he had to say about the future in Bloomington.
I'm excited about our future. We've done a lot of good things. We've got a lot of people behind us, and this is where I wanted to be. I played the what-if game with my wife and my agent 4 weeks ago, and it all pointed to where I'm at right now. So I'm glad we have that behind us, and now we can focus on, what we should be focused on this time of year.
Well, it's pretty interesting how well they have done, and at the end of the day, when you think about it, they've just done a fabulous job, and hopefully, if they can't beat Ohio State, they don't get blown out because there's no way they should be aced out of the college football playoffs.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's funny, you say Indiana beat Ohio State, and it's so weird. It's jaunty because how many times do you ever see that? Well, matter of fact, we know the last time that's ever happened. 1987 and 1988. Those are the last 2 times that Indiana defeated Ohio State on the gridiron. In 87, Ohio State head coach Earl Bruce spoke afterwards and deemed what happened, the events, to be a really dark day in Ohio State football history. Here's what he had to say back in 1987.
We were not the defensive football team we probably should have been in that game anywhere near the. I mean, and the thing that they did that hurt us, I'll never forget. I kept saying, "My God, they ran a guy in motion. We're playing zone defense. Ran him down the field about 15 yards and curled in front of our safety man and caught the ball. And they moved the chains. You know what I mean? Whenever it became possible, they moved the chains. They had a hell of a play, a hell of a thing. I said, when are we going to go to man-to-man, match that guy up and stay with him so he can't catch the ball, put some heat on the quarterback, whatever. But we didn't do that. And they really, I think that score, if you look at it, is 31-10. And they dominated that football game. And in fact, I said, Bill Mallory and I are close friends. He's a great football coach. He was the coach. I said, this is a black day in the history of Ohio State football, a very dark day to lose to Indiana. We don't normally do that, but that was telling our football team something, you know.
A dark day, Dalton. But it's going to get darker.
It is going to get darker because, as we mentioned, the following year, Indiana would beat Ohio State again. And a lot of that chatter of it being a dark day in Ohio State football, well, it made that conversation, the trail went a little bit west. It made its way to Bloomington. The Hoosiers were aware of Earl Bruce's comments, and Indiana great Anthony Thompson talked about what the motivation was to repeat against the Ohio State Buckeyes in 1988.
That following year, we dubbed this Ohio State-IU game Dark Day 2. Because the first game we played in Columbus my sophomore year, Earl Bruce said that this was the darkest day in Ohio State's football history. And that following year, we dubbed our game against the Ohio State Buckeyes, we dubbed it Dark Day 2. And so we had our mind set that we're gonna pound the Buckeyes, and we're gonna crush the Buckeyes. That was our thing, crush the Buckeyes. But you know what? If somebody would have told me that we would beat them the way that we beat them, I would have never believed it. It made IU history. So we were just really proud of what we done at that game.
Well, that was one of the best ever to carry the football. Anthony Thompson for Indiana. Dark Day and Dark Day 2. It's awesome.
Let's see if Dark Day 3 comes around this time in 2024. Think about that, though. That's 36 years ago, 37 years ago, the last time Indiana beat Ohio State. That's what could be the historic moment at the Horseshoe this year if Indiana slays the Giant.
Well, it could be, Dalton, but think about it. Just look at Indiana's football history. You can go through a whole bunch of people they haven't beaten in a while. Until this year. So, I mean, who knows? We do know this. Indiana's a really good football team. They don't make many mistakes. They know what they're doing. They're well coached. And at the end of the day, if Ohio State doesn't play a clean game, they could lose this thing.
I agree.
Well, since we're talking about the dark days in Indiana and Ohio State, up next on the Sports Life, we're going to talk about the game coming up. Indiana at Ohio State. And this game has all kinds of meanings. It's coming up, but first a break.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little. But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
Every kid deserves a chance to feel safe, to have their own bed, to be loved and cared for. That's why I love my foster parents. They make me feel like part of the family.
Raise hope and foster dreams for one of 13,000 Michigan children in foster care. Visit michigan.gov/hope for a home or call 855-MICH-KIDS. That's 855-MICH-KIDS. Sponsored by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
Do you hear that? That's the sound of uncertainty lurking under your hood. You know the feeling. I know I do. That sudden sinking sensation when you see a check engine light or your car unexpectedly breaks down and you're faced with sky-high repair bills. It's time to shield against unexpected repairs with CarShield. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company and has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't let the fear of a breakdown keep you up at night. Trust the Shield, CarShield, and say goodbye to terrifying repair bills and hello to peace of mind. Your plan also comes with 24/7 roadside assistance, courtesy towing, rental car options, and so much more. Don't wait till it's too late. Call CarShield now before a breakdown. Protect your wallet. Protect your car with CarShield. Get our best protection ever. Call now. You'll thank me later. 800-965-1292. 800-965-1292. That's 800-965-1292.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Roxanne Watson is on a mission.
Hello, how are you doing today?
She wants more people to register as organ, eye, and tissue donors.
Are you an organ donor?
Yes, I am.
Yay. My goal is to sign up the most people in the United States.
What drives her? Roxanne's own life was saved through the gift of a heart transplant, made possible by an organ donor.
I decided that day that I was going to devote myself to the cause of organ donation and signing people up and honoring my donor by doing that.
Now she's back to health, and she's a powerful force helping to save lives every day through her work. Imagine what you can make possible by leaving behind the gift of life.
8 people can be helped with the major organs, and up to 50 people can be helped with a little bit of everything. And when you think about it that way, that you could help that many people, it's amazing. It really is.
Learn more and sign up as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. Go to organdonor.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, in Columbus, Ohio, there's a game we've all been waiting for, probably for decades. Only kidding. But it's Indiana, unbeaten, going to Ohio State, once beaten. It's a game between number 5 in all the land and number 2. And at stake in this game, obviously, is a trip to the college football playoffs. But what's really at stake is the chance to play for a Big Ten championship in Indy in December. But before we talk about the game, Zach Osterman is joining us from the Indianapolis Star. And Zach, before we talk about this game, can we talk about Coach Cignetti's brand new contract?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think there's an extent to which Indiana kind of believed in the Curt Cignetti hire so much when they pulled it off back in December that they thought they might be here kind of soon in terms of trying to extend him. Now, I don't think anybody expected 10-0. I don't think anybody expected the playoff positioning, all that kind of stuff. But that's, that's the, I guess you'd say, the confidence level that has existed in Curt Cignetti, especially within sort of his athletics department, his AD, his president, pretty much from day one. And listen, I think we've all been around long enough to know that just because you sign that big contract doesn't mean it always works out. But number one, I don't think anyone can argue with Cignetti's results thus far. And number two, if you're Indiana, there is an extent to which you just kind of have to try, because I think Indiana understands that, this train may be leaving the station for good in the not so distant future. And, it's probably running out of turns to get this one right. And it strongly believes it has a coach that can, kind of finally build something more consistent, more sustainable in Bloomington. Now it's going to see if that's correct.
Well, Zach, before we talk about the monster game coming up here between Indiana and Ohio State, if we stay with Curt Cignetti, I mean, you tackled a lot of it from the Indiana University perspective, but what about the Cignetti perspective? I mean, if you hang around the cesspool that can be Twitter or X at plenty of different times, every burner account of Ohio State fans have put Curt Cignetti in an Ohio State sweater, getting ready for the upcoming season. They want Ryan Dagon, they want Cignetti, but he's a hot commodity. A lot of teams would have wanted him. What does it say about Curt Cignetti staying in Bloomington, and why does he?
I think, it's interesting. We talked to him on Monday afternoon, and he didn't want to get too much into it. He said, my number one focus is going to be the game. But he said he kind of indicated that maybe it had been about 3 or 4 weeks that he'd kind of been considering this through kind of the process of being offered the contract and, talking about it with his agent, with his wife, and before deciding to stay in Bloomington. We don't know what all the terms are. My sense is this was as much for him about some of the structural support, NIL, greater pool for staffing and retaining assistant coaches. Indiana, and this was independent of Curt Cignetti, but I think, he'll certainly have his fingerprints on it now. Indiana is planning a pretty substantial investment into renovating Memorial Stadium. That goes back even to last year, but again, now you would imagine Indiana is going to involve Cignetti and seek his opinion on a lot of those decisions, probably pretty substantially. And I think that, Cignetti is, number one, he's not that young of a coach. So it's he's not going to retire tomorrow, but I think he's old enough now. He's joked before that he's too old to kind of worry what people think. I think he's old enough to kind of know what he's looking for, what he wants. Number two, I do think the challenge at Indiana has appealed to him of kind of going to a place that obviously has had, some difficulty getting on its feet before and establishing and maintaining that success. And in the NIL era, listen, there's, Cignetti likes to say that there are only self-imposed limitations and that he's going to make sure he never puts any of those on his own program. But in the NIL era, maybe some of those old sort of cultural limitations are being torn down. In a place like Indiana, if it can get staffing right, can get player development right, and can continue to get the resources together to be active in recruiting and putting rosters together, maybe a place like Indiana can be a little bit more competitive than it's been in the past. So I think all those things kind of came together for a coach that, this is his 14th year running his own program. He's got a clear idea of what he wants, what he needs, what to ask for. And I think he saw enough of that in Bloomington to feel comfortable sticking around.
Well, Zach, let me ask you the big question. Indiana, you know them really well. You know the Big Ten well. Realistically, what kind of shot do they have of winning this thing on Saturday?
I think they can. I don't know that I would predict. I don't know that I'd necessarily lay it on the line and say they will. I kind of haven't gotten to the point in the week where I'm comfortable putting a prediction together, but I do think it's possible. I think this is an Ohio State team that is undeniably the most talented team Indiana's played this season. I think that's pretty clear to even the most sort of basic look at Indiana's schedule thus far. But I think there's some areas where I'd wonder if Ohio State or if Indiana could get after Ohio State. Ohio State's had some offensive line issues. Indiana's got one of the best defensive lines in the Big Ten, if not the country. The flip side to this being the most talented team Indiana's seen is alongside Oregon, this is probably the most capable offense Ohio State has seen. And Oregon put up 30 whatever points on Ohio State and ultimately won that game. And I know it's in Eugene, but it's more about kind of the question of, can Indiana move the ball? Can Indiana score the ball on Ohio State? And Indiana's coming off a bye week, which I think is meaningful because I think Indiana needed to refresh after that Michigan game. I think it needed to collect itself, get a little healthier. And, hey, it's a small sample size. But the last time we saw Indiana off a bye week under Curt Cignetti against Nebraska, it's fair to say that week was put to good use. So I think there are some things Indiana's going to struggle with. Ohio State's secondary, I think it's going to be able to take away some of the vertical routes, for example, that Curtis Rourke really likes to throw to guys like Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt. But I also think there may be some ways that Indiana can disrupt Ohio State a little bit. And then it's a question of maybe, who handles the moment better, which of course Ohio State's got more experience with, but Ohio State might also feel a little more pressure with just because it's going to be at home. And this is, almost de facto a Big Ten championship play-in game.
Well, Zach, you kind of mentioned it there. We're running a little short on time, so I'll have you have a shorter answer here. But the hot topic really around this game also is, look, Indiana wins it, they're in the college football playoff. If they lose it, there's been some framing that if they're blown out, that do you keep them out with the one loss if it's an ugly one? Where does this sit? How can you make it make sense to us?
I at the beginning of the season, I would have said it's hard for me to imagine a team in the Big Ten or the SEC getting to the end of the year with only one loss and not getting into the playoff. Obviously, the way Indiana's schedule has shaped up, I think it's made that at least a little bit more plausible. So, too, has an SEC that has this traffic jam of two lost teams and even, potential two lost teams. Texas still has to play at Texas A&M, for example. There's obviously a fair bit of runway left. A couple weeks of games still need to be played, and some things can narrow that field. I think certainly if you're Indiana, if nothing else, probably the best way to say it is you're not going to want to give the committee that kind of data point to consider. If you go to Ohio State and you lose competitively, then I think the committee will look at you and probably drop you a little bit, but say, hey, we can accept that. It's clear the committee likes the Big Ten. Right now, 4 of the top 5 teams in the field are all Big Ten teams. If Indiana goes to Ohio State and loses, fighting, let's say, in Columbus, then I think they're fine. I think it's possible Indiana could go there, take a heavy defeat, maybe not, awful, but decisive and still stay in. You just don't want to give the committee that kind of, I don't want to say that kind of excuse, because the committee, I think, has been pretty fair on Indiana thus far, but you don't want to put that possibility in the committee's mind, as much as anything else. But if you're Indiana, you also probably don't want to be playing thinking about only losing by a few points to Ohio State. So I think, from Indiana's perspective, I think that's out of sight, out of mind, and they just need to put their best foot forward and see where it takes them in Columbus.
Well, Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star, thank you so much. And I got to tell you what, I never thought I'd be waiting for an Indiana-Ohio State game, but I cannot wait for this one on Saturday. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, as always.
So there you go, some of the thoughts from Zach Osterman from the Indianapolis Star. Well, that's one half of the story. The other half is Ohio State. Now, Tim May with Letterman Row has been covering the Buckeyes since the early 80s. So if anybody has any feel for Ohio State or this game, Tim May's got to be it. So, Tim, welcome to the show. And, wow, who would have thought? The big game, Indiana, Ohio State.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of buddies, and I said, we ought to be calling this the game before the game, because what a showdown, man. I mean, I've been around covering Ohio State pretty much every day since 1984 when I took over the beat at the Columbus Dispatch, and before then I did some off and on stuff. But back in the Bill Mallory years of the 1980s, Indiana had a very respectable program, and of course, beat Ohio State in back-to-back seasons in '87 and '88. And I remember after that '88 game, my lead in the Sunday paper of my story the next day was a new day has dawned in the Big Ten. And I basically went on to talk about how Indiana just beat Ohio State back-to-back years. It was crazy. But then, once again, there was a sort of a denouement, for want of another term, in the Indiana program. The worst thing they could have ever done was got rid of Bill Mallory, but they did. And they've been in the hunt, really, since getting rid of Bill Mallory, of somebody like a Curt Cignetti, who not only knows football but has a plan for winning. As he said so eloquently, you can Google it, what he's all about, and he's exactly right. And now all of a sudden they're the turnaround team by far in the nation this year, 10-0 for the first time in their history. And this is the game before the game, the showdown, number 2 Ohio State versus number 5 Indiana. Who would have thunk it 3 months ago?
That's exactly right. And Tim, a few weeks ago we had the voice of Indiana, Don Fisher, on with us, and he left us with a note that really kind of stuck with Will and I, where he said, look, I don't necessarily believe Indiana's going to go through the entire season undefeated with postseason and all, but if they do lose a game, it's going to be a team that simply has more talent than them. Ohio State, I believe, has more talent than Indiana. Do you see the areas, the margins where Indiana can close that gap to try and knock off Ohio State there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the classic margins are, winning the turnover battle and getting an extra couple of possessions. Like basically that's what Oregon did, to Ohio State way back on whatever that was, October the 12th, out in the Autzen Stadium. They got a few extra possessions and ended up winning the game by 1 point. But here's the thing about Curt Cignetti coach teams, and definitely what stands out about this team. Number one, it is talented. Is it raw talented as much as Ohio State? No. I think any expert would tell you that just based on recruiting rankings and everything else. But they play like a team. He brought so many players with him, for example, from James Madison. And then he's got a running back, from Wake Forest, who was really excellent at Wake Forest and is one of their primary weapons on offense. I mean, it's a good mix and match of a little bit of the old, but a lot of new, and that includes the coaching staff. It's a very talented coaching staff. And they are playing – anybody watched the Michigan game? They got pushed into a corner finally in the second half of a game for the first time this year. And what they do, they came out swinging and held on to the lead there and won that game, with basically a clinching field goal, but that only gave them a 5-point lead. But the way Michigan wasn't moving the ball all the way to the other end of the field, that was enough. But the bottom line is just the way this team is persistent and keeps coming at you and makes very few mistakes. That's a recipe if the other team gets cocky or overconfident. But, believe me, Ohio State is not overconfident or cocky about this game. They understand what's walking into Ohio Stadium on Saturday. It's an undefeated team, one of the few undefeated teams left, one of only 2 undefeated teams left in the Big Ten. So Ohio State knows what's at stake.
The Buckeye passing game, they're going to face a defense that one coach told me at times Indiana will show 15 to 17 different defensive back coverages. If that is the case, is the Ohio State brain trust good enough to cope with that?
Yeah, but the field's still 53 and a third yards. Is 53 and a third or 50? Yeah, 53 and a third yards wide. 53 and 2/3 yards wide. Drop that little knowledge on you. Whatever the width of the field is, and there's the depth of it too. It's hard to have enough guys back there to cover everybody every play. If you follow my drift, Ohio State's had a pretty elite passing game for the most part for maybe a couple of decades, going on a couple of decades now. I think they feel confident they can get somebody open. The key will be protection for Will Howard. That stands out more than anything else about this Indiana team. I think they've got 31 sacks, which is a tremendous number. And they're number 1 in the nation against stopping the run. So they almost want you to throw the ball. So we'll see. I guess Saturday will tell the tale. But Ohio State, push come to shove, is for the most part been able to get guys open. Even on that last drive against Oregon, the freshman receiver Jeremiah Smith makes a great catch on the sideline to move the ball deeper into field goal territory, but he was called for offensive pass interference. The bottom line is I think Ohio State feels confident it can get guys open, but we're reading tea leaves right now, right? The game will tell the tale.
So Tim, real quick, who wins it?
Well, I think Ohio State holds sway. Me and every other odds maker out there and everybody else, because it is a home game for Ohio State. There's no reason for Ohio State to be looking ahead, if you catch my drift. And so I think Ohio State holds sway. Like you just pointed out, it is the most talented team Indiana will have faced this year, and that means on both sides of the ball. So I think that will definitely, over the long haul, make the big difference.
Well, Tim May, I appreciate it.
It is always a pleasure being on with you fellas. You know that.
As always, a good chat with Tim May. A little bit of humor and a whole lot of content. Well, when we come back with more of the sports life, we're going to talk about the college football playoffs. It's a big topic, and we're going to deal with it in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584, 800-810-1584. That's 800-810-1584.
That ought to do it. Totally energy efficient.
Oh no, not again. This time, we're getting help.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the battle of energy efficiency improvements. In this corner, Mr. I can save money and do it on my own. And in this corner, Miss Let's Get It Done Right with some help. Fight! Or you could just go to avoidenergydrama.com. From sealing your home to helpful loan options, you'll find all the tips and tools you need to stop wasting energy and stay comfortable. Avoidenergydrama.com. Brought to you by Michigan Saves.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you can't measure it on your bathroom scale. Sorting out a mental health concern is not something to attempt on your own. You won't find a bipolar disorder by looking at a thermometer. Like many other health conditions, help for mental illness takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a stick-on bandage. So the sooner you seek treatment, the better. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. Find out what to do. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support. That's samhsa.gov/support.
And welcome back for more of The Sports Life. Will Tiemann here along with Dalton Shelton. Don't forget, auto owners insurance, simple, human sense. Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you. Well, coming up this year in college football, a 12-team playoff field to determine which team will be the national champion. Well, Dalton and I had a chance to visit with the brand new director of the college football playoffs, and that is Richard Clark. And when we visited with him in Indianapolis, along with J.U. Callcrick, the first thing we asked him was, can you explain how this thing works?
Yeah, so it's going to start with the selection committee. And the selection committee has been at this for a long time, and they're going to rank the teams 1 to 25. And they'll do that. They're also going to rank the top 5 conference champions. So they will also be ranked. And then what's going to happen, the top 4 of those 5 conference champions will be seeds 1 through 4. The number 5 conference champion will be, if they're already in the top 12, they'll be seeded where they were ranked. If they're not, let's say they were 16, then they'll be moved to number 12. And then the next 7 teams ranked will be the 7 at-large teams, and then they'll fill in the rest of the bracket. And then they'll all be filled in. The first round of playoffs, the first round of playoff games, teams 5 through 8 will host them on campus. That's going to be spectacular. It's going to be exciting. Man, I want to be at – I'm going to be at one of them anyway. If I could be at 2 of them, I would. But I'm going to be at one of them. But 5 through 8 will play 9 through 12 on campus, and then we'll play through the bracket. And the semifinals and the quarterfinals will be at bowl games, the New Year's 6 bowls, and then the championship game will happen. So it's going to be a pretty methodical. Once the selection committee gets the bracket set, campus games happen, and then we step through the bracket. So going to be very exciting.
Well, you talk about the element of having on-campus games and how exciting that part is, and I think that is great. And I think one of the other things, too, in talking about the expansion getting to 12 teams is the excitement that, look, if you're 12, 13, 14, 15, you're playing for something in November. Like,
that's right.
There's so many fan bases that are going to be pulled into this now.
I agree. I think, going into that, into mid to late November, you still have probably 20 teams that could, that are contending, that could actually make it. And, a win or a loss at that point could either boost someone in or pull someone out. So it keeps fans engaged right up to the end. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that'll do for the season overall. And that, as a fan, forget about being executive director. As a fan, I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good.
Yeah, and you talk about that excitement, and you got to also, if I'm a Mountain West school, I'm like, okay, I have a shot now.
Right.
I have a pathway of making it into the playoffs there. So talk about the significance about, schools like, we saw a couple years ago Cincinnati got in, and that was a big debate. Now there's not going to have to be the debate. If you're in that top 12, you're in. So talk about that, like those little schools that really don't get those spotlights, there's an opportunity and they have a pathway.
That's right. So there's a couple pathways too. The top 5 conference champions, for example. One of those will be a group of 5 team. It'll be a Mountain West or a MAC team or one of those teams. That's a path. There's nothing that says that you can't have 2 conference champions from one of those smaller schools. Let's say you have a major upset in one of the other conferences in the ACC, let's say, and you get a team that upsets and wins, and then you have another conference champion that's, you have 2 undefeated conference champions in the G5, and the committee ranks them above. Now, I'm using my imagination here, but I'm just saying that the way they've structured this, it doesn't limit to just one group of 5 champion. In all likelihood, you kind of know where the top 4 are going to come from, but it's not limited to that. Then in the like you were just talking about, those 7 at-large teams, a team could not easily, nothing's going to be easy, but a team could find their way through that path, right, to be one of those 7 at-large teams. So there's a couple paths that some of the lower echelon of conferences could actually find a way in. So that is very exciting.
And so I know there was excitement, once people got rid of the BCS, there was excitement about the playoffs. There was a 14. People like, okay, we need more than 4. Now we're getting 12.
Right.
And you're going to start hearing those people saying, hey, we need 14. We need, so what's the thought process with that expanding the expanded playoffs?
Already hearing it. Right? So here's the thing, though. The commissioners considered a whole bunch of options. They considered several different iterations of what the playoff might look like. They landed in a place that I think is really good right now. It doesn't extend the season too long. It still honors the conference champions in a way that is appropriate. It allows for a number of buys to happen, and it also gives 2 weeks between when the selection happens and when the first round of playoff happens, and that gives the teams a little bit of chance to recover, get their legs back up under them, heal some injuries, things like that. If we make some of those other changes that we're talking about, there's going to be second and third order effects, right? Not to say that they shouldn't happen, but what we really need to do is make sure that we execute this playoff, this format as amazingly as we possibly can. Then at the end of the season, we take a look back and we go, all right, what could have been better? How could we make this even bigger than it was? And maybe there's no changes. Maybe there's adding 2, 4, there may be some other things that we can do, but we have to execute the 12-team playoff in great fashion and then assess, look back and assess afterwards.
So there you go, some of the thoughts of the brand new director of the college football playoffs, Richard Clark. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about rivalry. UCLA, USC. It's all coming up in just a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dad. Did you get a new haircut or something? A new shirt? You're looking good.
What happened?
A little fender bender?
How little?
A few days in the shop little? But thanks to Mom and our agent, we've already submitted a claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto Owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Sounds like simple human sense.
I'm fine, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask.
Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to michigancommunityaction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
This is a potter's field. When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here. It is a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't have to be that way. For as low as $1 a day, you can ensure your family will have the money to pay your funeral expenses. We offer burial insurance plans that pay up to $30,000. Considering the average funeral costs more than $10,000, that's peace of mind for your family. There are no medical exams, your rates won't increase, and your policy cannot be canceled as long as you make your premium payments. Call now to get approved in minutes and ensure your final resting place is more than just a pauper's grave in a potter's field.
800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. 800-562-2407. That's 800-562-2407. Paid for by Final Expense Direct.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just...
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Team here along with Dalton Shetler. Well, in the Big Ten, we know about rival games, and we also know about UCLA and USC. But it's never been a rival game played between those two when they were Big Ten members. And to be honest with you, they're a long way away from the Midwest. So we've invited the voice of the Bruins, Josh Lewin, to join our show. And Josh, thanks for being with us. So can you explain to us what this rivalry is all about?
Well, I mean, it's literally cross town. So while, a Michigan-Ohio State crosses state lines, or a Michigan-Michigan State, you guys are reasonably near each other. This is literally 10 miles across town, and it's a battle for everybody's eyeballs and attention in a market where you have to win. I mean, there's just no tolerance in L.A. for a mediocre season. Now, that stated, both these teams are having mediocre seasons, so kind of something's got to give. But this is the one chance to do a little bragging rights action, and it gets taken very seriously.
I do want to ask you here, too, about one of the trophies of this game that's been a big part of the history, the Victory Bell. What can you tell us about the Victory Bell?
Well, it's very heavy, that much I know. But, it goes back quite a long ways, obviously, like all these traditions do. And, it's kind of fun. You get to paint it in the colors of your team. If you win it, you get to troll it around your campus all year. I mean, they'll bring it back out for basketball games when UCLA plays USC and all of that, and homecoming events, and it's honestly not much different than any other kind of manufactured symbol of rivalries out there. But fun thing to get people excited about it, no question.
And it's currently blue because UCLA beat USC last time around on the gridiron. I do want to ask you here too, Josh. A lot of schools sometimes with rivalries, they'll be looking at a season, and like the Bruins right now, they're fighting for postseason eligibility, but boy, if you beat that crosstown rival, the season is kind of chalked up as a W. Is there a sense of that feeling with this?
Yeah, big time. And, Michigan, Ohio State's a great example of that too. If you just beat your rival in that game, it's like you get a pass no matter what else happens. And we saw that with Chip Kelly. I mean, he saved his job a couple times when there were some very angry donors and fans. It's like, oh, he beat SC? Well, okay. He can come back. And that game is always right at the end of the year, usually the penultimate game of the year. So, it's the recency fallacy, I guess, or bias where, if people just remember either you beat USC or you lost to USC, and that carries a lot of weight.
I also was curious of this, Josh. I mean, I think a casual fan hears USC, UCLA, and they look at UCLA and they say, oh, basketball school. They look at USC and they're like, football. That's right. Big tradition there. Is there a sense of that with this rivalry? Does it change the vibes of it based on that, or is that just a completely out of touch and distance view of the rivalry?
No, 364 days a year, you're exactly right. I mean, USC is obviously, more of a football school, and UCLA has always been more of a basketball school. And that is never going to change. I mean, UCLA could probably, they could win 3 Big Ten titles in a row in football. They'd still be considered John Wooden and Paulie Pavilion and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton, and all those guys. So fair to say, except for when they meet that one day in football, where, it's kind of forgotten that UCLA only has one national championship in football, and that was back in the 50s. It's, this is the one day where you just let it all hang out.
Josh, to close out our crosstown LA rivalry discussion, your favorite Bruin moment in this game?
Well, I mean, again, I go to recency bias, but, for UCLA fans, when they were hanging a 60 burger at their place a few years ago, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson performed the high hurdles at the goal line to get in the end zone on the last of as many touchdowns that day. That springs to mind. There haven't been a lot of, big UCLA wins, but there was one back in the 80s that most Bruin fans of a certain age remember, where they upset the Trojans 13-9, knocked them out of a national title contention. And that usually is the case. If some team can play spoiler, that's always a lot of fun. This year it's different. You're right, because both teams are literally playing for their bowl game live. So that's what this year's game is all about. But sometimes you've got like a 3-8 UCLA team against a 10-1 USC team, and if UCLA can somehow win it, that and that you've ruined USC's season, that's kind of cool too.
Well, Josh, I hope it's a good one again this year. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Josh Lewin, the longtime voice of the Bruins of UCLA and one of the good guys. Well, we now have Josh's take on the rivalry between UCLA and USC. Now joining us on the show is a longtime member of the Southern Cal Radio Network, Jordan Moore. So, Jordan, we're going to kind of throw the first question to you a little bit like we did, Josh, which is, can you explain what you think this rivalry game is about?
This is a true city rivalry. I mean, we call it the Crosstown Showdown. It has a lot of names, but in terms of proximity, it's one of the closest, if not the closest, in the country. We share the same city. USC sits closer to downtown, UCLA closer to the west side. But mileage-wise, if there's no traffic, which is always an issue around here, it's actually quite close between the two schools. And so, the city is always divided between USC, UCLA households, and oftentimes within the households. So it's a special one for sure. Many of the players, the local ones, they grow up playing with each other, playing against each other. It goes back a century or so now. So it is always a special one, and it comes with its own unique traditions.
You know, Jordan, what's really interesting, we just finished talking with Josh a little bit about this. If I were to play a word affiliation game with a casual sports fan or observer, and I say USC, the first word that probably comes is football. If I say UCLA, it's either basketball or John Wooden, but you get the picture, it's two in the same. With the idea of one maybe being more known for football, one for basketball, how does that affect the rivalry and kind of the identity of it?
It's always hard for the other one, right? So, I'm also the men's basketball voice, and, it's always been hard for USC men's basketball to carve a spot in this town, and it's always been hard for UCLA football to carve a spot in this town, and that's just the truth of it. UCLA is always sort of playing against Big Brother when it comes to the football field. They do certainly have some good history at UCLA, but it pales in comparison to USC's football tradition, and then vice versa on the hardwood. So I always think that the younger brother comes with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and the older one, shows up like the bully on the block, ready to restore order. So, there certainly have been some runs in this rivalry, and it's gone back and forth. But ultimately, when you look at the history in terms of football and basketball, it's pretty clear.
Well, no doubt about it. It means a lot, Jordan, but I'm curious a little bit, too, about the vibes of it, because a lot of times we talk about in sports talk radio or whatever that, the Midwest, which we're pretty familiar with here in Big Ten country, that the weather's not so kind up here, so a lot of times we just fully enthrall ourselves into sports because it's what we got going on. But out there in L.A., you and a Bruin maybe after the game could say, well, we could go to the beach. I'm just curious if there's that casual, cool Cali vibe around this, or what the actual rivalry vibe is.
Well, there's definitely hostility. I don't know if it's certain years maybe it boils over more than others. But no, I definitely think the vibe is still very much, just opposing ways of life in the city when you come up, as a Trojan or in a Trojan household, or if you come up in a Bruin family. So I do think it is really as heated as they come in a lot of ways, and I even find that USC really has two rivalries. We'll play Notre Dame next week, and that's our other rival. And the way I've always sort of seen it is there's a lot of respect in the USC Notre Dame rivalry. There's a lot more hostility in the USC UCLA one.
Okay, who's going to win this one?
That's a great question. It's a great question. I think that both teams come in with a little bit of momentum. The Trojans finally won a close game over Nebraska. UCLA, which was sort of left for dead in the beginning of the season, has found its legs a little bit here in year one under Deshaun Foster. So, I think what you're going to see is a very close game, because it seems like USC only plays close games this season. The Trojans have struggled to separate from anybody. And, I think ultimately it'll come down to the quarterback play, and I'm looking at Jade Mayava, who's the new quarterback here at USC. He was sort of up and down in his first start against Nebraska, had some great highlights, but also put the ball in jeopardy a lot. So I think the Trojans will go as he goes, and if he plays well, he could really be the hero to save this season here at the end.
Well, Jordan, have a great broadcast and appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.
So there you go, some of the thoughts of Jordan Moore from the Southern Cal Radio Network. Well, when we come back with more of the sports life, maybe our greatest parting shots ever. Only kidding. Back with more in just a moment.
So, got one for you, boss.
Oh, yeah?
What's black, white, and dented all over?
I give up.
The company truck. I know, but thanks to our agent, we've already submitted an insurance claim and can track the status right from the app. Auto owners pays what they owe without any hassle.
Lucky for you, that's simple human sense.
Ask your independent agent if auto owners make sense for you.
So I graduated last year and got a job. Sweet! But it got boring. I didn't really have a purpose. Then I started volunteering with Community Action. It's a statewide network with 29 agencies across Michigan. Community Action helps people with food, housing, utilities, childcare, senior services, you name it. I found my purpose, helping people, changing lives. Won't you join me? Call 1-855-MI-ACTION or go to MichiganCommunityAction.org. Sponsored by Michigan Community Action and Michigan Association of Broadcasters.
If you have diabetes, listen up. If you have insurance, you can qualify for a continuous glucose monitor. With a CGM, you can continuously track your levels and trends and spend more time in range, significantly lowering your A1C. More importantly, a CGM eliminates the one thing most people with diabetes hate: painful finger sticks. Order your new continuous glucose monitor today. If you use insulin and if you've seen your diabetes care provider within the last 6 months, you may qualify for your own CGM right now. We'll do all the insurance paperwork and deliver your new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost to you. Medicare and most insurances will cover your CGM, so don't wait. Have your insurance handy and call the Aptiva Medical CGM Health Hotline right now.
800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. 800-948-6912. That's 800-948-6912.
We'll be back with more in a moment. This is The Sports Life.
Anybody ready for a burger?
I'm State Fire Marshal Rich Miller, reminding everyone to think safety first when it comes to outdoor grilling, whether it's charcoal or gas. Never overload your grill with food. Excess fat and grease will create large flames. Grill outdoors and never inside or in a garage. Never leave a grill unattended and always keep a fire extinguisher nearby. For more tips on safe grilling, visit the Bureau of Fire Services website at michigan.gov/BFS.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit InsureKidsNow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
And welcome back for more of the Sports Life. Will Teeman here along with Dalton Shetler. Fun show this week. We've talked a little football. We've talked about the playoff picture and the big matchup between UCLA and USC. So with that, we've now worked our way to our parting shots. And as always, Dalton goes first.
Yeah, and I wanted to let everybody know, first off, that as always, you can always give us a follow at Sports Life Now on Twitter or X. We post everything that Will just talked about there. Again, at Sports Life Now on Twitter or X. But for my parting shot, look, there's been a lot of discussion about with Indiana football. Their schedule's been too easy to get to this point, that maybe they don't deserve to be in the college football playoff. That's been one of the hot button issues in college football talk, at least on social media here in this past week. But I want to go to Tom Fernelli, who tweeted this out, and I couldn't agree more with it. It's such a solid point. He says, and I quote, "Let's say that Indiana's schedule was so easy that it had a 75% chance of winning every game," which would be incredibly easy, right? They'd be a heavy favorite every game. Assuming Indiana's opponents were that terrible, there's still only a 5.6% chance they'd wind up at 10-0 at this point. That's how hard just winning the games in front of you is, and Indiana does deserve some credit for that. So Indiana, assuming they have a good one with Ohio State, they're worthy of the college football playoff.
Oh, I would agree, Mr. Dalton. By the way, since we're talking about Indiana, their head coach, Curt Cignetti, think about this. A year ago, he's the head coach at James Madison. He is making a nice salary, $670,000 a year. That's good. Less than a year later, he signs an 8-year deal for $8 million a year plus bonuses. America's a great place, Dalton. It's a great place. And with that thought, that's a wrap for this week's show. And we should also note that you can find us anywhere you have your podcasts, like SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple. And make sure to check us out and hit subscribe. As always, thanks to the Big Ten Network. The Sports Life is produced by Dalton Shetler and assisted by Owen Cronin. Our executive producer is Wendy Hart. So on behalf of Dalton Shetler, I'm Will Teeman, and thanks for your time.